Good morning, everyone. And for the first time ever, I can officially say, it sounds like, welcome to One Community Christian Church. It's who we are. I wonder if you know the work your body has done today. You thought about that? I wonder if you know the work your body has done today and every day. How much disease it has fought off. How many times your body could have failed but battled on. I wonder if you know how many ways it could have broken but didn't. I wonder if you know the work your body has done today and every day. And each day it has done this amazing job. Without your help, without your approval, without your acceptance and your kindness. Each day, your body has soldiered on, regardless of the constant stream of negativity, pulsing its way from your brain to your cells. And you may think, I'm not the right shape. I'm not attractive enough. I'm just not good enough. Holy Christmas. Perhaps it's time to see your body for what it truly is. Your body is an amazing and mind-blowingly competent machine that does nothing but to get your soul where it needs to be in this life and to let you live. I wonder if you know how much better you and your body would be as a team. As a team. I wonder. I truly wonder.
David did say in Psalm 139 that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Gene, the best part about that was it does all this work without our help, without our permission, without our even being aware of it. Fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, today we're going to talk about two principles, two promises, and a pathway to get there from here. P's just sounds so good that principle and promise and pathway seem to bubble to the surface. Makes it a little bit easier to remember as well. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, today is February 26th. We're 22 days from spring, thank heavens. Just 2 days ago, we learned that we are now officially and legally One Community Christian Church Incorporated. And so we're going to start to see some changes around here. It's going to be good. And we're going to work on getting the bank accounts combined this week and all that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty doggone excited. And at my age, that's saying something. Tell you what. Oh, let's look at a principle, shall we? John 16:33. Most of us know this verse by heart. This is Jesus talking. Principle number 1. John 16:33. These things I have spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. Now in the world you're going to have tribulation, but be of good cheer. Why? I've overcome the world. It's a principle. There's a couple principles at work here. Principle: in the world you're going to have tribulation, but in me you're going to have peace, so be of good cheer, I've overcome the world. Well, he spoke that 2,000 years ago. And things haven't changed all that much. The world is still the world. And in the world we still have tribulation. It hasn't changed. It's the same. Same now as it was then. Matter of fact, it ain't going to get any better. And the longer we're in the world, the more tribulation we're going to have, until it culminates with what? The Great Tribulation. But there's something else that hasn't changed either. The world is still the world, but Jesus is still Jesus. Yeah. He overcame the world. He's still in charge. He's the guy calling the shots. Tell you what, 2,000 years ago, when he rose up from the dead, devil looked at all the demons and said, boys, there's a new sheriff in town. He's still the sheriff. He's still the sheriff. Nothing happens unless he says it's going to happen. That's the principle. The world is still the world, but Jesus is still Jesus. Let's look at another principle, shall we? Just for fun. 1 Corinthians 2, verses 9 and 10. Again, this is one that most of us know by heart. But the minute I try to quote it by heart, I'll mess it up. And remember how Archie Bunker used to quote the Bible? Oh my gosh. Ay, ay, ay. 1 Corinthians 2, verses 9 and 10. But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for those who love him. There's a second part to this, as there was a second part to the first principle. But God has revealed them unto us by his Spirit, because the Spirit searches all things, yea, the very deepest things of God. So in this world, we're going to have tribulation. But our eyes haven't seen. Our ears haven't heard. It's not even entered into our hearts or our minds, the imagination, that the things that God, what? Has prepared for those who love him. That's 2a. Now here's 2b. But God does reveal those things to us through his Spirit. Okay, so let's review. Principle number 1. The world is still the world, and there's going to have tribulation, but Jesus is still Jesus. That hasn't changed. The world hasn't changed. Jesus hasn't changed. I'm glad. Mostly for the Jesus part. Principle number 2. God is preparing stuff for people who love him. No matter how much tribulation there is in the world, it doesn't matter. That doesn't change his plans. Beyond that, he's not surprised. He doesn't stop preparing because things get bad. Oh, I didn't see that one coming. There's another principle which is not in the message. It's Romans 8:28. Mike, you don't have to put it up because we do know this one by heart. All things, even tribulation, work together for good for those who love the Lord and who are the called according to his purpose. Even tribulation. The world is still the world. God is still God. And God is preparing stuff for his people. So here's what popped into my head on Thursday morning. Very short message today. Psalm 23, verse 5. We know this one by heart too. Matter of fact, all the ones we're reading this morning are very common scriptures. When I say by common, as an often used and often spoken, often quoted. Psalm 23, verse 5. Quick review. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, it's not entered into the heart of man the things that God has. Please step up to the plate. The things that God has prepared for those that love him and who are the called according to his purpose. Psalm 23:5. Thou preparest a table before me. Where? In the presence of mine enemies. Now, wait a minute. In the world, you're going to have tribulation. There are enemies in the world. This is a message for One Community Christian Church. It's also a message for us. It's a message for us corporately, but I'm convinced it's the Word of God for us individually as well. Matter of fact, the title, if there was to be one for today's message, there is a table being prepared. There is a table being prepared. On a corporate level and on an individual level. I'm convinced that many of us on an individual level are surrounded by enemies. And enemies, again, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, worlds of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. And it often seems that as individuals, what we want to do, people and stuff just get in the way, enemies. And it's one step forward, two steps back. But it's in the middle of all that that God says there's a table being prepared for you. In the middle of all that, whatever that is. And your that is different than my that. I know what my that is. But your that is different, I'm sure. Look at Shane, big, strong, husky fella with his arm in a sling. Can't even hold his baby boy with his right arm. He's preparing a table for you. And I could go on and on and on. There is a table being prepared. And it's in the presence of our enemies. I remember the first time that scripture became life to me. Everett Church of God, just east of us, a mile or so. Reverend Bill, I can't think of his last name. Is it Kisner? I heard somebody say something. Is that correct? Bill Kisner. I have done some work with Bill, architectural work, remodeling one wing of his building and whatnot. And I grew to really like the guy. And I found out that he was up on the roof. This was many years ago, maybe 15 years ago. He was up on the roof helping put a new roof on the building, and he fell off. Now, for the average person, that would be a serious problem. But for Reverend Bill Kisner, it was a much more serious problem because he's a hemophiliac. If you just tap him on his arm, he gets a bruise that big. He just bleeds. He fell off the roof, and guess what happened? God prepared a table before him in the presence of that enemy. In the middle of hemophilia, he got up and walked away. Suffered, and this was, again, this is 15 years ago, but it brought that scripture to life. The Lord spoke to me, table in the presence of his enemies. God did not remove the enemies. To my knowledge, he still suffers with hemophilia. But when he fell off the roof, he found a table prepared. And so will we. So will we. So will we. So we've covered principle number one. The world is still the world, and thank God Jesus is still on the throne. Principle number two, that no matter how bad the world is, God is preparing things for the people who love him. Okay? Now, promise number one, he is preparing a table. There is a table being prepared for you, and there's a table being prepared for me, whatever that means. There's also a table being prepared for one community Christian church. And there's a table being prepared for the church universal. God's fixing to do something. He's preparing the things that God has prepared. Something about God that's very interesting. We find out that he's invisible. It's one of the things. He's immortal, invisible, all only wise God. Well, if he's invisible, we can't see what he's doing till it's done. It's going to get done. Promise number 2. It's way back in Isaiah, which is not as far back as Psalms, but Isaiah 59, verse 19. Again, one we probably know by heart. So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and fear his glory from the rising of the sun, which is in the east. And, promise number 2, when the enemy, there he is again, shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord is going to lift up a standard against him. I'll tell you what, there's a table being prepared and there's a standard being lifted. And it's happening. It's happening. We can't see it because we serve the immortal, invisible, all-wise God, but it's happening. And the Lord gave me the word for us, that there's a table being prepared and there's a standard that's being lifted. In both of those scriptures, there's also an enemy, like there's also a world. But my response to that is, so what? So what? You know, and the disciples, Jesus said to the disciples, he said, go in the boat and go to the other side and I'll meet you there. No, I beg your pardon, wrong story. I combined 2 stories. Let's go to the other side of the lake. So they're in the boat going to the other side of the lake, and he goes underneath the boat, falls asleep, and a tempest arose, as King James said. And the wind was blowing like crazy, and they were afraid the boat was going to sink, and they were scared to death, forgetting that Jesus said, we're going to the other side. We're going to the other side. And he prepared a table for them in the presence of that enemy. He got up and looked around, and he said, peace. And that was to the winds. And then he said, what was the next thing he said? Be still. I'm sure that was to his disciples. I'm sure of it, not a doubt. Peace, you be still. Principle number 1. As long as we're in the world, there's going to be tribulation. The world is still the world, but Jesus is still God. Principle number 2, God prepares things despite what the world has to offer. God prepares things for people who love him beyond what we have ever seen, heard, or can possibly even imagine in our heart. Rabbit trail, just a little one though. So I know, it's hard to believe, but I think when we get to heaven, we're going to see colors we've never seen before. We're going to hear sounds we've never heard before. We're going to have thoughts and ideas we've never had before. It's not, ear has not heard, eye has not seen, it's not entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love him. But it's not just heaven, it's here. So principle number 2. Promise number 1. He's preparing a table in the presence of your situation. In the middle of your situation, he has a table prepared and spread. He has a meal to eat. He has a place of rest. Principle number 2. The worse it gets, the more you can count on the fact that he's going to raise a standard. What a standard is, I looked it up. Means to cause to vanish. It means to deliver And here's my favorite line, to flit. To the camera. To flit. Just to flit. He's just going to go, I'll do it softly. It's over now. The standard is raised. I think that we're starting to see some of it. I look at what's happening down in Asbury. By the way, it's not Asbury College, it's Asbury Theological Seminary. Those kids who are in that college are there because they chose to be there. The things that God has prepared for those who, oh, baby. It happened a few years ago, 1970, the same thing happened. God has to move in each generation. He has to fulfill his promise for each generation. In Acts, the writer's talking about David being a man after God's own heart. It says that David served his generation. I'm going to be 65 shortly. My generation needs a revival. We need to find something that's more important than the biggest house and the fastest car, and I could go on, but you know what I'm saying. That's all right, Gene. You're allowed to laugh at me. We're having fun. That's why it's called Gino's Wit and Wisdom. It's okay. So we need to see God in a way that we've never seen him before, so that nothing else even matters. Because you know what? It doesn't. I remember Dad preaching one time, and he was talking about, he was being scientific, his engineering mind. He had read some article about atoms and matter and all that kind of stuff. And the article said basically that if you took the electrons and the neutrons out of atoms, all you'd be left with is the protons in the middle, matter. That's the matter. The electrons are not matter, they're electrons. But you have, matter in the middle there. And if all the electrons and stuff and all the matter came together in the whole planet, the scientists concluded that it would probably be about the size of a basketball. And Dad said, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters. And he's going to open our eyes to see things we've never seen, to hear things we've never heard. He's preparing a table. There's a table being prepared. There's a standard being lifted. Okay, so we covered the principles, principle 1, principle 2, promise 1, promise 2. How about the pathway to get there from here? That is also a very familiar scripture. It's found in Exodus chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. I'll give you a little background on this story. God miraculously delivered the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, from the nation of Egypt, where they served as slaves for 400 years. And it took 10 plagues to change Pharaoh's mind. And what's interesting about the story, too, is that God said he's the one who hardened Pharaoh's heart, which is why we know that all things, they're him. Without him was not anything made that was made, including Pharaoh's hard heart. Okay, but that's for another Sunday. Actually, that's for a year's worth of teaching there. So after the 10 plagues, they let them go, and the people of Egypt gave the people of Israel all their gold, and just whatever it takes, get out of here. Don't go away mad. Just go away. That was the message that Egypt gave to Israel. So they did. And they weren't too many days in their journey, and Pharaoh forgot about all the 10 plagues, especially the last one, in which he lost his eldest son, the plague of the death angel. And guess what Pharaoh did? He changed his mind. Nope, I want him back. So Israel's out there just being Israel, and they're walking underneath the cloud during the daytime, and they're getting close to that pillar of fire by night so they could stay warm. And they come upon the Red Sea, and not sure exactly what we're going to do here, never been in a place like this before. And then they heard something behind them. Oh, Pharaoh changed his mind. Lovely. They said, would that we had just died in Egypt. And they got all over Moses. I mean, they just got all over Moses. What are you doing? Moses felt like a pitcher in a major league ball game. It's not what you did in the last game, it's what you're doing tonight that matters. There he was stuck. But he had a word for the children of Israel. He said, and Moses said unto the people, fear not. Stand still. Don't stop standing. Stand still. Continue standing. And you're going to see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show unto you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Because the Lord's going to fight for you, so you hold your peace. Remember? Peace. Be still. Moses said the same thing to his followers. You just be still. Watch what he's going to do. It's so marvelous reading this little story that, so as you know, God parted the Red Sea, and Israel's going across in dry ground, just happy as they could possibly be, and the soldiers, the greatest army in the world at that time, don't forget that. So, well, if they can do it, we can do it. And across the sea they go in their chariots and their horses, and making all kinds of noise. And King James tells us that the Lord discomfited them. He discomfited them. I don't know what discomfiting means, but I wish I could have seen it. And it says that he took the wheels off of their chariots. And boom. Oh, God, I hate it when that happens, you know? And they got stuck in the middle of the Red Sea, and God said, see ya. He told Israel, you're going to see them no more. You know why? Because they were all in the bottom of the deep blue sea. That's why. That's where they were. I know how they felt. And no more. The world is still the world, but God is still God. No matter what's in the world, we can't imagine what he has prepared for us. Number one, we know it's a table. And what I like more than anything is where it is. Right in the presence of our enemies. It's like thumb your nose at them, you know? Spirit, mind you, is raising a standard. And we're going to see them no more, because we will have turned our eyes upon Jesus. That's it. I'm going to say goodbye to the folks on YouTube. We're going to take a few minutes just to digest, shall we say, what's been said. So goodbye to everybody. And for us,